So I realized something about my colors. Something that was being hinted at me for a while, but I was just completely oblivious. Something that some of you guys even noticed about my thumbnails. But I was so locked into not paying attention that I only noticed it when I did this piece of No Guns Light fan art. I hyperfixated on this for like 4 hours, something like that. Didn't move, didn't drink water, kind of just wiggled in my seat until when my back and neck were getting uncomfortable. Please don't do this. Please don't be like me, take breaks every hour or something. So after I finish it, I proudly show it to my family, thinking I'm about ready to post, bring it to my phone to desaturate it because I wanted to put a trigger warning for blood on Instagram, and I see the contrast part of the edit. Out of curiosity, I up the contrast and... Oh, I see how it is. Yeah, it's gray. It's like someone took a transparent gray sheet and just slapped it over top. So it then leads into the big question. How did I even manage to do that? Like, this seems like something you almost have to do deliberately, and I did it on accident. It's a very specific problem, and I quickly realized what the problem was. The answer lies in the fact I used the contrast edit on my phone. When you stick to mostly blues on the color wheel, you don't branch out into any other colors, it's just monochrome, it'll look mostly blue, right? Well, just the same. If you stick to the grays on the color wheel, it'll be bound to that gray sheet, just the same as this will be bound to the blue sheet. It wasn't just that I had grays in here. It's that I kept in this very small area of grays. If you guys remember my last video about contrast, you'll know I mentioned that the further apart something is from something else, the higher the contrast and the more noticeable and potentially pleasing the image is. This is a very small rectangle, so it's low contrast. Sure, I have clear darks and light, and it looks like Juzo and Olivier, but when you compare the two pictures, it's obvious the difference in contrast. I believe this problem stemmed from the fact that I heard all these amazing artists say that there's power in the grays, and there is, I'll get into that. Take Marco Bucci, for example. I believe he said that he starts with desaturated colors and adds saturation after to lead to his focal point. Tiffianie Mang describes grays as supporting actors, and you can get so much subtlety with grays. Grays are really amazing things. But let's rewind. Marco Bucci starts desaturated and adds saturation. Tiffianie Mang loves them because they're supporting actors. I started desaturated, and then I stopped there. That's my problem. There are 3 degrees of saturation: grays, mid, and high saturation. If you stay in any one specific group, you're more than likely going to have the same issue I have because of the low contrast. So, spread out into the other groups. Start in the grays if you want, and then go into mid-saturation, maybe even a few in high saturation, but you need distance to beat the low contrast. But how do you learn what to keep desaturated and what to add saturation to? That's where I recommend you study your favorite artists and study from life. You can also take scenes from movies because the cinematography and post-editing people already laid it out in a way that is pleasing. They already figured out all the problems you need. A place you can go to look for screenshots of movies is capthat.com. I've taken several screenshots from it. When you got all of it together, ask very specific questions. You don't want to study blindly. I'm thinking of, when do they use low saturation and high saturation? Is the light lower in saturation and the darks deeper and richer? Do saturated colors give a certain mood that grayer colors don't? Or is it the saturation or the lighting that affects the mood? And so on. While you can learn from blindly copying and studying, or just even copying with a vague idea of what you want, it'll be faster if you have pinpoint questions that triangulate the issues you're dealing with. Another thing is, don't just throw the failed art piece away. Study that too. Where did it go wrong? But also, what could it be used for? Most of the time, it can't really be used for anything. Disproportionate anatomy doesn't look good. But maybe you can use the fact that it causes this ugh feeling for when you want someone to feel ugh. Horror movies will do this with body horror and whatnot. This piece isn't necessarily bad. It just didn't have the contrast and striking colors that I wanted, so it failed in that aspect. So when would you want a piece to look all grayed out like that, you might ask? Fog! Fog is a gray sheet that hangs over the image and brings everything to a super low contrast. You wouldn't be able to make something out clearly in fog. Now, this piece doesn't fulfill the look of fog either, so I would have to push it a bit more like this. But the basic principle is there. So I learned all of that with my colors. But as I was fixing that, I started noticing other issues. Juzo's head was rather small, and you can't see his trigger that easily because it blends into the background. In the original anime scene, this leg was in front of the camera, so it blocked the view of the opposite leg. In this angle I drew, though, that wouldn't be the case. Also, I ended the pole right at the edge of the paper, and that was nagging me. To fix that, I made Juzo's head bigger, made the trigger more noticeable, added some shine, and then extended the pole off the page and drew their bodies the rest of the way. Now I'm super happy! Learning things like this is always super fun, so I enjoyed my deep dive to discover this. Figuring out problems in art can be super frustrating, don't get me wrong, and most of the time I can just be like, when I'm unable to figure something out. But I'm trying to reframe it as, this is a challenge, instead of, I'll never figure this out. And I think that's helping me a little bit. One last lesson I want to share that I learned through this whole arc. I believed. I had color theory down. I thought that I watched all of the videos from my favorite YouTubers that made everything make sense, and now I was super smart in color, and it's so easy. I knew that my lighting to stuff was off, and that I would need to work on my values for sure, but color? Nah, I got that in the bag. It was my own hubris. It was my own ego that kept me from deep diving into color and figuring things out more. So this slap in the face from my phone was the perfect wake-up call to remind me to not be so full of myself. Be proud, be happy with my art, obviously. I think this is really good, and I'm really happy with it. But don't be so blind to your faults that you are unable to change them. Anyway, sorry about the delay in the video. I decided to join this contest 11 days before it was due. I was originally planning on making my next video sharing my process for this, but the whole judging thing is until like July, because I was dumb and I couldn't read the rules. So I was focused on that. Thank you all so much for your patience. I hope you learned something from all of this, and I wish you all have a great day.